Welcome to Dare to Lead, a Halian Podcast, a show that empowers you to navigate leadership, career, and business in today's dynamic landscape. I'm your host, Stuart Fry, CEO at Halian. Today, our guest is Miro Fok, a dynamic leader with over 14 years' experience in the insurance industry, who's transitioned into a leader in the insurtech space. As the founder of Vita Virtues, he's driving unique digital innovation and global expansion. We'll explore his career journey and how he became an entrepreneur and his invaluable advice on leadership. Now let's get into the episode. Hi, Miro. Welcome to the show.
Hi. How you doing?
Yeah, very well. Very well. Before we dive into your kind of career and its trajectory and how you got to where you are now, tell us a bit about your childhood and what were you like growing up?
Well, I grew up in a small town called Petaluma in California. As a kid, I was in the early days of like being diagnosed of, they called it at that time ADD, but I was an ADHD kid. So I had lots of energy, little attention span. So I was a handful, I would say, especially to my parents. I feel now that I have kids, it's I can appreciate that a lot more. So, but yeah, I was just like a wild child. My mom liked to call me like a free-spirited kid. Always just doing my own thing, never really like following like what most of the other kids did. So
Yeah.
Yeah.
When did you pick up your first surfboard?
I didn't start surfing until I was able to start driving. My parents would take me to Santa Cruz, which when I was like it was about 2 hours from where I was from. And they would take me to the beach, but I started surfing when I was like 15, 16 years old. So
nice. Apart from Keanu Reeves, who was your role model growing up?
Well, I really think the two people that probably had the most influence on me growing up until probably my 20s was probably my father and my grandfather. My father ran a family business and it was a technology company, but as a more hardware. He did actually early stages of software as well, like when they would, give you like a CD and then you'd load it onto your computer and like, so he did stuff like that, but then
probably floppy disks, not CDs.
Yeah, floppy disks and then CDs eventually. But yeah, my dad, I learned a lot from him on business. And it's funny. I always now reflect on this. He was an engineer by background, and so the way he looked at the world was like really interesting, and like the way he would like break things down. Like engineers, I find them to be most like curious, like unique people. They like as a skill set, they are trained to look at problems first and then create a solution around those problems. So he would constantly like be walking into places and being like, oh, what this place needs is, this, or this place would need that, always looking at problems. So like as a byproduct of doing this all the time with around his kids, like my mind always like was shaped to look at problems and solving them a lot. So, my dad sort of passed that on to me. And then my grandfather, I think like as my personality to help people, he was a very like giving person, volunteered a lot for the church and other sort of like food kitchens and stuff like that. So I've always grown up with this need to like give back. It's just a kindness thing that he did on a regular basis. So I think those are the two people that probably influenced me the most.
Yeah. So a 12-year-old Miro.
Yeah.
What were your aspirations? What did you think you're going to be when you grow up? Obviously not in insurtech, but
no. So they do this. I remember very young age. When I was graduating, they ask you what you want to be when you grow up, and like most of the kids are like, I want to be a firefighter, or I want to be a professional football player. I watched this show, Trading Places with Eddie Murphy.
Yeah.
And I thought it was so cool. And I remember saying like, when I grow up, I want to be a stockbroker. Because I thought it was so cool. So, I wanted to be a stockbroker at 12 years old.
Nice. At what point did that end and you decided to go into insurance?
Well, I started my real professional career working for a company called AG Edwards, which eventually in 2008 got bought out several times, and then eventually was working for Wells Fargo Advisor. So in a sense, I was almost doing stockbroking, but like really selling like retirement plans. Not selling. I was like cold calling
Yeah.
people for that. But and then when like the 2008 crash happened, that's when I sort of went on a new like career journey to figure out what's new, what's next for me, and then
Yeah.
discovered insurance, and that sort of changed my perspective on things.
Yeah. Where did you find my number when you first pitched me? I've always wanted to ask you that,
You know
actually.
what? Actually, I was just talking about the story. So no, actually, so I was working for a company in China at the time, and we got. I was working they call it like the late shift, because it was a very competitive company and always looking for whatever edge I could get. And so they had this opportunity to work the late night shift. So I would come in like 2 and work till like 10.
Right.
And I would get inquiries from Dubai. And actually, one of your staff, Harry,
Yeah.
him and I were like talking for like weeks or a couple months on getting him insurance. And it just so happened that the company was like, hey, there's a lot of business in Dubai. Do you want to go over there? So eventually I started talking to Harry, but then he introduced me to you, and you guys had a tiny office at the time. And you were so nice to like, so hey, come to a barbecue and meet everybody. And you're kind enough to introduce me to everybody. But that's how I first met you. So yeah, time flies.
Long time ago.
Yeah.
Long time ago.
Yeah.
You've been in Dubai a long time like me. What's your favorite restaurant?
I think historically it'd probably be Bukatir.
Okay.
The authentic sort of Dubai. Well, I mean, it's not authentic. It's like I think it's Indian Southern food, but it's I think Anthony Bourdain went there a long time ago and gave it some clout, and it's been one of my favorite places. But my new spot is this place called Alfala Monkey. If you want an authentic Middle Eastern experience, like late night food, that's my favorite place to go to.
Whereabouts is it?
It's on like near the creek area.
Okay.
Yeah, sorry, not the creek, the Business Bay sort of entrance area of the creek, of that bay. So yeah, that area.
Nice. So you've lived in Petaluma.
Mm-hmm.
Is that how you pronounce it? Petaluma.
Petaluma, yeah.
Petaluma. Shanghai, Dubai. Where's next?
Oh, I mean, with our new venture, it could be anywhere, but I I was talking about this with someone else. Before kids, like put me anywhere in the world, I'd be happy. But Dubai for families, there's no chance I'm gonna leave anywhere until they're on their way in college or something like that, because this is one of the best places in the world, in my opinion. Like for raising families, it's tons of opportunity, and I get lots of time with my family. So yeah, next is big question mark for me, but Dubai is for foreseeable future.
And you're in one of the best locations, which is Al Fajan.
Yes, Al Fajan. It is the best.
Our favorite place.
It is the best.
Absolutely. So what inspired you from your transition from kind of traditional insurance into that insurtech space?
Well, it started off with when I first started brokering, I was interested in a space that was very digital focused, which was like digital marketing, and we got like lots of leads that way. But it was still pretty competitive with some of the best brokers that are out there. The majority of the market didn't have any kind of technology solutions, and I knew I needed to do something that was that could be more dynamic, which was particularly distribution. So I started working with a developer a long time ago and developing our own sort of internal solution.
Yeah.
And I ended up going to an event that was sort of for brokers all over the world. And when listening to all the customers, because they had this sort of like town hall with all the brokers, 500 brokers around the world, and they they were all sort of talking about the problems that they're having, and they were really relying on the insurers for creating a solution for them. And here I am. I created a solution myself, and there was like 5 of us using our one solution, and I was like, well, this solution could fix a lot of these people's problems. And so I sort of got the idea there to, I passed it through a few other people that were in sort of the technology space, but not necessarily insurtech, and said, hey, here's a problem that I see in my industry. I have a solution that's at that time wasn't, ready to go to market, but like, what do you think of this idea? And a few influential guys that were in that space would say, hey, this is an opportunity for you. So I sort of went on that, took the risk, and started investing more time into the technology, and then turned it into a more like retail product that I could sell to brokers to help a specific problem that they had.
Okay. So what is the problem? Just to explain to everyone, what does Vita Virtues do, and how does it solve the problem?
So we help streamline the sales process, but our core function to our software is quoting. So traditionally, brokers have to follow a very manual process when it comes to quoting customers. So if you go to, I'd say 95% of the market have a digital solution for brokers to be able to quote their customers, but it's very specific just to that one company. So if you're insurance A, we give you a portal, and you can plug in your customers' details there, and we'll give you a quotation that can help that one customer just for us. But the whole point of brokers is giving like a huge array of options so that customers can see a big part of the market or whatever you normally work with. But again, if they don't have that solution available, they have to end up going to like an Excel spreadsheet or a PDF form, or sometimes email other insurance companies directly to get quotations. And you can wait hours to create like a comparison for that customer, or it's sometimes days. So what we do is we go to all the insurance companies, and we get their information from them, because a lot of times they don't have any kind of like APIs to plug into, and they just have a bunch of data. So we get that data from the insurance companies, we centralize it, standardize it, and then give it to brokers in a platform to where they can streamline that process. So we get again a process that normally takes days for them to do, and we streamline it to like seconds. So obviously saves them a bunch of time, a lot of money in administration. They don't waste their salespeople's time as far as being able to, to sell and doing like manual work, and then they can just focus on what's the most important, which is selling.
And that means the brokers can almost have a comparison, say, right, insurer A, B, C, D, these are the quotes, these are the prices, these are the different benefits, and these are, the plus and minuses for you.
Correct. So like we don't really like replace the salespeople. Like we really empower that process, but it just allows them to be able to get as many variations as possible to refine exactly what their customers are looking for. Because in the end, salespeople just want to sell as fast as they can, and unfortunately, in some cases, they end up just selling what's easiest. And we don't, for the end consumer, they don't want that. Brokers don't want that either. They ultimately want to be able to find the best plan. So it really helps them to be able to do that part.
Yeah. It's a big step, isn't it? It's a big leap being, in that insurance space for so long, and then moving into being an entrepreneur. And I think that loads of people, there's millions of people out there who are in industries that think of ideas to say, oh, this could go and change that industry, and here's an idea that could streamline processes and do all those kind of things. It's a massive leap to go from day-to-day job into doing that. How did you make that leap?
Slowly.
Did you ask your wife first?
Yeah, I mean, I definitely needed her buy-in. Because we were managing a whole other business at that time, so I needed her to understand what the plan was and how we were going to accomplish it, and slowly phase me into being a technology leader instead of like an insurance brokering leader. And she bought in on the vision early on, and was very supportive, and still is very supportive in that process. And so that was one part. And then just making the leap and just trusting the process. I also have awesome business partners and team members that sort of help that that with their support, it just really made the whole leap a lot easier because them buying into the vision really helps, right? Because if they're not, then it just makes those down points in the journey like even worse. But they really do pick you up, so that's a big part of it.
What's been your biggest challenge in the transition?
Well, we have a big vision. So getting customers to buy into the vision, partners, so insurance companies to buy into the vision, because we're essentially making a new market. And I'd say just sort of getting people to buy into a bigger vision of things. That's like one challenge that we run into. The industry is a very sort of traditional manual industry, so they don't like change.
Yeah.
Insurance is by nature risk adverse, so when you introduce something new, they are always like looking for problems or potential issues, and they want to mitigate as much as they can. So trying to navigate that mindset is part of it. So you have to do a lot of proof of concepts and hand holding. So that's probably the biggest challenge that we run into, is just getting people to trust something new. And yeah, it's just a learning process.
Yeah. Do you find that once you get one or two of them on board, you start getting case studies, and then it's almost that the rest of the market has a fear of missing out, and then they start coming to you?
Yeah, there's a little bit of that. Like particularly when we launched in UAE was first early on, it was hard to get those. Well, we got the early adopters first, and then we're able to prove the concept through a few cases, and then eventually when people start talking about it, because it's not a huge industry, so there was people start talking about it. Oh, now I want it, and then other people, I need it now. So yeah, it's sort of and we'll say that's the case for UAE, and then growing other outside markets, it's starting that process over again.
Yeah. I guess when you say that insurance is an industry, maybe it hasn't embraced technology to the same levels as other industries because risk averse. How do you think technology will change the insurance industry over the next 3-5 years?
Well, quite significantly, because again, most of the processes today are very manual driven. So there's such a huge technology gap for in insurance. So it's going to innovate so many areas of it. We're just focusing on front office problems, so primarily sales. But you have things like underwriting that can be improved, billing, servicing, administration. So there's a lot of spaces in insurance that are still manual, and there's a lot more technology companies that are evolving today in helping these sort of like technology gaps. So what we're doing right now is just like a fraction of what's going to happen in the next 3 years. So we should see some huge improvements, particularly in the insurance space.
AI must be massive for insurance. When you think about, we did some data studies previously during COVID, actually, with one of the hospitals here, on the amount of people or the demographic of the person who would go in with COVID-related symptoms and then within the next 14 days get admitted to ICU. And we did a study for all these kind of things. So very early stage stuff. AI must be huge for insurance companies, not only managing their processes and the way they do it, but also looking at types of people that might be susceptible to things and putting people on different medication early on to stop future issues.
Absolutely. The AI's place in the insurance industry it's obvious. Its application is going to take some time for sure. Again, going back to like the risk averse mentality, not having control over that makes a lot of people nervous. But I think the way it'll be more involved is just, efficiency purposes. So like looking at internal processes that can be more improved, less human driven processes as well. So if you can remove some of that sort of manual labor, it'll make for initially insurance companies a lot more efficient as organizations, more profitable, so that they can, in the end consumer can benefit for stuff like this. But eventually, when there's a lot more trust and a lot more use cases where they can see AI has improved, cases of claims, it's going to massively improve the customer journey in the end. So a huge potential is there for sure.
So from the moment the light bulb went off, ping, Vita Virtues, here's something, to today, what's been your most rewarding moment and your most rewarding project that you've done so far?
The most rewarding moment, I'm gonna tell you, and I'm gonna try not to tear up a little bit. I know it sounds corny, but it's true. So when we first started off in 2021, we brought on a customer, and we'd like to interview a lot of our customers to just see how things are going. And there was an administrator that worked for one of our brokerages that after they started using the tech, we would say, "Hey, how's it going?" And I wasn't interviewing it. It was my colleague Richard. He called me after he talked to this person, and he's like, "Oh man, I heard the most amazing story." He's like, "Yeah, this lady, she told me before Vita Virtues, she would have to stay in the office till like 7, 8, 9 o'clock at night, like doing quotes for the sales team. And today, after she started using the software, she can go home with everyone else." And yeah, like hearing stuff like that made me like feel like we're really solving a problem here. So
you're making a change in the industry.
Yeah, and people's lives.
Yeah,
I was like, I know people work really hard, and basically I started the company to help people. So
yeah, that's great. That's really good. Yeah, it's really good. Really good.
I told you I'd try.
Yeah. Project, what's been your number one project there?
Number one project is now just expanding. So taking our technology to solve customers outside the UAE, their problems, because the UAE brokers they have a specific problem that are pretty much all the same. Whereas like outside the UAE, so we have customers now in the UK, and other parts of Europe, some in Africa and Asia, and each one is been a challenge to itself. So right now, the primary focus we're trying to solve, the biggest project is the IPMI space. So this has been probably the most rewarding one, because as we sort of improve this solution, it's solving a wider reach of problems. So I think for us, like sitting down with each one of those customers has been like huge aha moments for us. So it's that's been the most challenging and most rewarding.
Yeah. What advice would you give people who are in a similar situation to what you were in 2020? I've got an idea, I've got a job. How do I transition into that next stage? How do I get my idea to become real?
I would say first is create a plan, right? I meet, I have a lot of like friends and colleagues that come to me, and some of them come to me like after, maybe they left their job or they got released and they had the idea, and they're like, I'm gonna do the business now. And I never see doing something like as big as creating a company on a back foot is not advisable. So like having a plan in place is probably the best idea first, and start working on that idea. And then once you figure out that you are ready to execute an idea, you do baby steps, and eventually you make a leap. You do have to just say, all right, now I'm going to commit to that idea, and it's going to be a big one. It's going to be challenging, but I would say, make sure you have a good plan in place first.
Yeah.
Like talk to your wife.
Talk to your wife.
Get her to buy in.
Build the foundations. Yeah. Yeah. How do you define great leadership? I've spoken to leaders in all different industries, people that manage, thousands of people across multifaceted organizations, to people doing startups. How do you define great leadership in your business?
I find the best leaders, first off, to be very like authentic people. You meet them in the office, they're one person, and then you meet them out of the office and they're like that same person. I think authenticity is the most important thing, because if you're leading people and they don't know which person they're dealing with, it can be very you don't know what to expect from them at times. Also, yeah, people just buy into you more if they're like, I'm buying into the person, because ultimately speaking, you're trying to take them to another level in their career. They want to trust you for the long term. So when you tell them something, they want to know that you're telling them the truth. So I think being authentic person in and out is super important.
I think I agree with you being authentic, but you specifically and people like you must face some challenges because you're naturally like a very humble, nice guy.
Yeah.
How do you deal with those crunchy situations?
Uh, well, I mean, you do have to evolve, I think, a little bit more as a person. So like I don't know. I mean, I tend to think that can be overly nice, and I've definitely paid the price for that at times. So I think just making sure that you learn from those mistakes in the past and like sort of evolve yourself so that like when those crunchy times happen again, you know what to do the next time. So maybe you're to overshare on everything. You don't have to disclose everything right away, or maybe you have to just put your foot down when you normally wouldn't have to. So it's just maybe learning more from your mistakes and involving yourself a little bit.
Yeah, I think one of the things for me that as my career's evolved is, I've always said I want to be a human first. You want to be a human being. To anyone that comes to you, you want to be, deal with them on a human nature. However, you also need to remember you've got shareholders, you've got other people in the business. The decisions that you make affect a wide range of people. So you've got to be pragmatic with everything that you do.
Absolutely. And I imagine that's especially hard considering like you have to make some hard decisions, and you're such a kind person. So like, sometimes, and I'm sure over time you'd have to evolve as a person and say, hey, I got to make a tough decision, even though it goes against a lot of what you believe in, but it's in the end for the greater good.
Yeah.
So,
so in Vita Virtues, you probably want to build a quite a well-rounded business. What do you look for in your other leaders?
Similar quality. I mean, well, one big quality is coachability. So like, you got to be able to learn. I mean, I'm not the greatest learner. That's one of the challenges I had when I was as a kid. But you have to be able to be willing to learn. So like being a coachable person and willing to do new things. So like when I see that energy in people, that's one thing I really am trying to focus on. It's hard, I think, in the initial stages especially when you bring people on, but I think coachability is one area. Being organized is another thing too, because again, growing up, I found that I needed to be an organized person, and I think to work with me, if you're not an organized person, it just doesn't go very well.
Yeah.
So if you're coachable and are an organized person, then it's, I think, a good step in the right place for being part of our organization. So I think those are the main areas I pretty much focus on. Is like just be organized and just be open to new ideas and doing new things.
Yeah, you talked about your father and your grandfather's success previously. Has their kind of style and their leadership style rubbed off on you? Have you taken the good bits that they do and built that into yourself, or are you just like, I'm completely different?
I am different in a sense, but I've learned a lot from my father, particularly. Like, there's a very famous book, Rich Dad, Poor Dad.
Yeah.
And it talks about how he essentially learned a lot from his poor dad. And I'm not saying my dad was the poor dad, but
he's probably going to listen to this. So at the moment he's thinking, what?
No, but I learned a lot from him because he ran a business, and he did a lot of things correct, but also he did a lot of things that were not correct. And I learned from those things, and I reflect on how he ran a business, and I reflect on how if I were to go back in time and give him pieces of advice, like what would it be? And I use those advice for myself. Like, he went through the same stages of a startup. He went through the same stages of any other business owner. And if I do exactly what he does, then I will sort of follow that same path. And, I want something a little bit different. So, what would my father need to do in order to be different? So I try to do those things. So yeah, a lot has rubbed off, but also like I learned from his mistakes more than anything.
That's important though.
Yeah.
What would you say to an 18-year-old version of yourself?
If I had to give a piece of advice for, like, we'll say career, I would say focus on the problems of people that have lots of money. Those are the ones that pay the most and reward the most. So just focus on those problems.
Yeah.
Or get in an industry where those are the main sort of source of problems. So that would be one piece of advice.
Yeah.
And yeah, be patient. Just continue being patient. I think sometimes I can be impatient at times. Like things maybe don't move as fast as you can, and if you get impatient, you start to like jump to new things. And I think a lot of learning is in the process. So just continue being patient. Just understand that things will evolve, but it just doesn't look like that like day by day. It'll look, when you reflect in the previous year, you'll be able to see what you've accomplished and in the last year or the last 2 years. But in that one moment, it seems like nothing's moving. So you just have to be patient sometimes and trust the process. So,
no, I agree. I agree. It's incredible when you look back. I think it was COVID started 5 years ago.
Wild.
What?
Yeah.
You look back and I'm not quite 50 yet, but when I look back at things, I just look back and say, wow, I can't believe that was that long ago. And it seemed like, 2 years, and it's 5 years ago. Scary.
Did you think the same thing when you're starting, like we'll say mid-stage your company? Where was it like, you look at like the last week and you're like, we're not moving fast enough, or
Definitely.
What did you tell yourself?
I got a piece of advice a few years ago, actually. Eat the elephant one bite at a time. And you want to go from A to Z as quickly as possible. But actually, if you do that, you don't do it well. You don't run a marathon by sprinting.
No.
You've got to put one foot in front of the other. And along the way, you make mistakes. You understand why you made those mistakes. You learn from it. You move on. And that's the bit that I've learned is patience. I'm the kind of guy that would go to a showroom and go, I really like that car. Can I drive it away now, please? And they're like, no, it's a 12-week waiting list. And I'd be like, what? And every day for those 12 weeks, I'd be like, right, one more day. That's my natural personality. But I've learned to mellow that.
That's good.
Yeah. It's important too.
I think specifically like in a startup, it's like one thing you have to do. And I mean, I have a lot of mentors and I read a lot of books, and like the one like reoccurring theme is just understand there's a process. Like it's hard sometimes, especially if you're like on LinkedIn all the time and we achieved our unicorn status in like 2 years. And you're like, what am I doing wrong? You're like, these are so rare, right? There's no like database of like, hey, this company went from X to, nth degree in 15 years or 10 years or 5 years. Like they're not highlighting this on the news. Everyone's like, really, oh my God, everyone can achieve this in 3 years. You just need to do X, Y, and Z and get this funding. And, it's hard sometimes not to like want to, move faster or pivot regularly. It's just, stick to the process, stay niche, and keep focusing step by step.
Yeah.
And when you reflect back, you'll understand, the impact you've made and the differences you made.
Yeah. I found that for a long time earlier on in my career, that I would see different people on social media, doing different things, and I'd be like, oh, why is that not happening? Why is that not happening? And then you realize that a very large chunk of it is not real.
No,
it's just people saying, I've done $1 million this week doing this, and you're like, wow, and you bump into them in the street, and they're like, oh, no, that's just for the socials. So you just
that's another thing too. Like, once you start running into the people that they're posting, you're like, I'd say the majority of it is just sort of self-inflated.
Absolutely. Manage your own destiny. Manage what's in front of you and what you can control. I say to my daughters, because two of them are working now, they come to me and they talk about their problems and different things going on. I would say, just manage what's in front of you, what you can control. Don't manage all the things outside of that in the ether that, you can't do anything about, because that will just consume you.
Yeah.
Just manage what's in front of you, and you'll walk away from the end of that day going, yeah, I did what I needed to.
Man, it's such a good lesson, especially for like our kids too. I want to be able to instill stuff like that to my kids. Like just focus on yourself. Don't worry about what other people are doing, because all that matters is you make a difference for yourself.
Yeah.
So
Coming from a kind of tech and engineering family background, did you think you were always going to fall into that space eventually?
Uh, not initially, no. Like, well, my dad told me, he's like, oh, you should get into computer science. So like that was my first sort of degree, and I wasn't a great student. I terrible grades. I wasn't great with standardized testing. So like very early on, I knew that I was not going to be a computer science major. So I ended up changing that to, I think the next thing I was like, I want to be a dental hygienist. And so I got into like, that was really hard though. That was like biology and chemistry. And I was like, okay, this is also not for me. So I sort of thought I was going to fall into that. And then I ended up doing a whole different range of like education. So I got into sociology in the end, and then communications. Communications actually turned out to be a pretty great education path for myself. So I ended up doing that, and I got good at just talking and interviewing, and then sales. And so I ended up doing sales, and then ended up just being good at selling things. So yeah.
How do you think your kind of your personality and your personal views have shaped where you are now?
I've had a lot of like different influences in my life. I was lucky enough to travel at an early age. So I've had different exposures to different lifestyles and different education backgrounds, different cultural backgrounds. So like that has had like a big influence in who I am today. I think if I was still back in my hometown, I'd probably be a completely different person. So I think like all the different lessons I've learned in life and the different people I've been exposed to over the last like 10, 15 years has really shaped who I am today. It probably comes down to also traveling. So
what's the best place you've ever visited?
Dubai.
Apart from my barbecue, when you first moved.
Man, that's a hard one. Like I mean, I love Sri Lanka. That's one of my favorite places. It's changing now, but I'm a surfer by my soul. So anywhere there's a beach, I'm pretty happy.
Nice.
Yeah.
What's one personal habit that's been key to your success?
I think my best habit, mainly because of how I've had to learn how to sort of focus on things, is being good at adopting new habits quickly. I've gotten better over time, but like I know myself to how to adopt new habits. So I think that's the biggest thing, because I'll, pick up a book where there's something great that I think I need to start doing myself or implement in our company, and just being able to have that become a habit really quickly has been like one of my best traits, right? Like in my life right now, it's just, I need to do this better. So, okay, I need to develop a habit around it. What do I need to do? Stick to it for, next 3 days or every day for the next 3 months, and just focus on that one habit. So it becomes who I am and not just something I do. So,
great. People deal with adversity in all different kinds of ways. What's your kind of key to getting problems and then resolving them?
I'm starting to learn a lot more about being an ADHD or a neurodiverse person. And one thing I've learned about being a neurodiverse person is like our brains function differently in like critical situations. So when there's something that's like really urgent that happens, for most people, a panic mode will happen. And for some reason, mine slows down quite a bit.
Okay.
So like when there's something urgent, I tend to slow down and think very pragmatically and creating a solution around it. So I think that's just sort of been the key to my success, is just maybe just how my brain works. So like when something really, really bad happens, right? It's not like, okay, panic mode, what do you do? It's like, okay, slow down now. What's the best way to do it?
Yeah.
Don't jump to any conclusions and like take it on very slowly. So I think that's one sort of, I guess, key to myself right now is just the way my brain is functioned.
Yeah. Yeah. What's some advice that you give to aspiring leaders?
Help people, like help people as much as you can, bring value. And then I think everything else will sort of come as you continue. So but as long as you're useful and bring value to people, I think everything else falls in place.
Yeah. Great. Well, I've really enjoyed today's episode. We're coming to an end. One last question.
Sure.
How do you dare to lead?
I dare to lead as a authentic person. I want people to understand the person that they're sitting in front of is a person that they'll see in the business as partners. I dare to lead as a vulnerable person. I want, I'll let people know that when I make a mistake, that I've made a mistake and that I'll learn from it.
Yeah.
And I dare to lead as an innovator. So I'll continue getting those mistakes and try to create new and innovative ideas around it. So
great.
Yeah.
Brilliant. Well, thanks again. And
Thanks.
yeah.
Thanks for having me.
Seeing you soon. That's all for today's episode with Miro Fok. It was great to discuss his journey from insurance to tech entrepreneurship, the challenges and opportunities of digitalizing insurance, and his leadership approach in a rapidly evolving industry. Miro shared valuable insights on innovation, global expansion, and building and leading strong teams. We hope you enjoyed today's episode. To hear more inspiring conversations, follow us on LinkedIn at Halian or visit www.halian.com. Thank you and bye for now.